Well, everybody knows the Zimbabwean voice now, that's for sure. And it's a beautiful voice, that one. One of unity, one of togetherness, one of peace, one of love, you know. That's the way forward. Oga, Oga.
From the African Highway Podcast Network, this is Zimbabwean Voices, the podcast where we shed light on Zimbabweans from across the world that are shifting the Zimbabwe narrative for the better. For episode 10, I had the privilege of interviewing a gentleman by the name of Otis Goredema. He is one of the leading personal trainers in Zimbabwe, and he actually gave me my first ever job at a gym. The reason why I thought it would be important to focus on Otis is not only because of what he's done in personal training in Zimbabwe and the industry at large, but more importantly, because of the space that he's created in the bodybuilding industry for women. I think the bodybuilding industry is largely dominated by men, but one of the big things that he championed and that one of the things that he wants to be most proud of is what he's done in terms of creating a lane for women to express themselves through bodybuilding. When we see how big health and fitness is across the world, particularly weight training for women now, I like that Otis really took it upon himself to help create that lane for women in Zimbabwe as well. So I know exercise is important in setting a good foundation for life, and I wanted to just get a sense around how he got into it, what inspired him to do it, and how it has helped change him as well as, you know, changing the people that he works with. So I hope you guys enjoy it, and yeah, take care. Cool. Otis, thank you so much, for deciding to meet with me this morning and for your time. A lot of people may not know that I've actually known you for a while. I know you gave me my first job actually. You gave me my first job. And
to me, it's an absolute honor. It's an absolute honor to have you. Did I give you? Yeah, it was the first. Yes.
Yes, you gave me my first job.
After Michael House.
Yes, after high school, I was in between high school and university, and you gave me my first job. And I don't look at it lightly because I think it was the start of a trend, which is I'm always put in client-facing roles. And my first client-facing role, or being in touch with people, was the job that you gave me. So I think when I've had to look back, I'm like, why do people actually pay me? It was all of those particular points, and you were the first person that kind of illuminated that idea. So I'm forever grateful for that opportunity.
Thank you, and I'm grateful that you did accept the job and bear with all my wing in it kind of management.
No, it's all good. But I thought it would be good to have this conversation because, as I spoke to you about this earlier, I've been getting very, I think, concerned with the Zimbabwe narrative where it's too skewed towards one end. And when you're engaging with any person, with any place, with any group of people, it's important that there's a balance of stories that you can draw perceptions of what those various people are. And my worry, I think, is that it's been way too skewed towards the negative. Not that the negative doesn't exist, but I think it's important that we shine light on the positive stories as well. So in that respect, I thought you would be a great, person to kind of to shine light on, specifically because of your background and your career in training people and being a coach to Zimbabweans specifically. You look at how Zimbabweans, of course, what they have to do, of course, is be impactful in the society. And one of the key things to being an impactful person is, quite frankly, exercise and taking care of number one, which is your body. Filling up your tank so that you are full enough to go and perform to your highest caliber out there in the world each day. So appreciate the time and you joining me. But I first want to find out, over the past year, it's been a bit crazy with COVID. Yeah. How has that impacted your job, if I can call it that,
Dumi, thank you very much for having me, and I'm really honored and once again really flabbergasted with the fact that I am some kind of influence, and I hope my story will resonate and encourage some people. Also, I am with you in that I think the narrative is a bit skewed, a little bit on the negative side regarding Zimbabwe. And going straight away with the COVID situation. I think it's a little bit over a year. And I'm very grateful that I so far have not been physically unwell and had the COVID. And it's not certainly of my doing, but certainly I think the higher power has definitely taken care of me. But in my industry, like most Zimbabweans, I've made a plan in that,
It's what we do. It's what we do.
The idea that COVID is a virus that affects, you physically, of course. A lot of people do still want to carry on training in order to keep themselves strong. One, to really keep themselves strong for the idea of aesthetics, and number two, to keep themselves strong. So in the event, or the unlikely event or likely event that they have COVID, their bodies are strong and fitter to fight it, which I will say maybe is what has helped me too. So I have been seeing clients privately, and I'm fortunate enough that I can manage to do the training and motivation, keeping the safe distance. And so far it has proved well. Yes, I have had clients that have had COVID, and finally they have recovered faster. So if someone can find a way to keep the body moving and stronger, and the muscle stronger, and obviously a good eating plan, you're better off to fight this this virus. For me, I'm still busy, but carefully busy. I can still make a bit of bacon.
To bring home.
Yes, I still make enough bacon to keep a roof above my head and physically be able to eat and look after my family.
And that's all. And that's what's most important. So you're good. So you're good in the grand scheme of things, like,
absolutely
up. We're up. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, glad that you are in such, a blessed position, and that, God is taking care of you in the way that he has. So maybe what I want to do is and I think, call them to, of course, that you've done that great work of helping people keep fit and active, and, taking care of themselves. But I think we'll come back to training. What I want to do is maybe just take it back to some of your early days, because I feel like there's been a very interesting,
absolutely,
there's been an interesting journey into getting into training, right? So, early days, where were you born?
Yeah, I was born in the humble suburb of Highfields. Yes, and I'm one of 5 children. I've got 3 other brothers, and then there's the thorn amongst the roses, my sister, who is 10 years younger than me, and I went to school here, and
in Highfields. In Highfields.
No. We moved. That's where I happened to be born, and very proudly. And then over the years, I was born obviously before independence, and then I went to Venona Primary School, and for high school I was at St. John's College.
So, quite a question on that part. You mentioned that you were born before independence. Was there a time where, I guess, you guys might have been the people that were the first kids to go to multiracial schools?
Absolutely.
What was that like?
When I went to Venona Primary School, you could count the number of Black families that were there. I don't think there were more than 3, 4 families. So basically, what our parents did, as they managed to get into the other side of the railway line, we were thrown straight into the deep end And basically,
and what was that like?
we had to, I keep using the term wing it there, and prove ourselves. It was a situation where we're the generation that had to represent, first of all, to our parents, because our situation was slightly different to our parents. Our parents didn't have to go to school with the minority. So
Correct.
there was an adjustment on both ends. So we had to tell our parents that, or tell our parents the experience that, oh, this is what is going on.
Right.
And, you must
live in two different worlds.
We're that generation.
And what was that like? Because of course you're living in two different worlds where, parents are, crossing the railway tracks, newfound opportunity and helping to extend that to their children. But of course, then their children are now in these spaces and have to now code switch and translate from Highfield into Vinona and live almost like a dual life, if I can call it that way.
Absolutely. It was a dual life because initially when we went to what was now called the multiracial schools.
Yes.
And remember, the migration was very slow. We were the first migration. The idea was now we had to speak proper English. And back then, believe it or not, you are not, in some schools, you are not allowed to speak Shona. So now you have to be like a generator changeover switch. Like at home,
get
the cool knocked out of you.
Whoa.
Get the cool knocked out of you, and back at home, your mom and your dad are like, when I'm talking to you, don't eyeball me, don't look at me in the face. And then when you go to school, Mrs. Hopkins is saying, you must look at me when I'm talking to you. Look me in there.
Wow.
So,
like I'm being told one thing on each other. Yeah.
I'm saying culturally, we ended up very advantaged because now, when you're speaking Shona, you speak loud, and you know how the African languages are very expressive and loud. And then when you go to school now, it's like you speak low, you don't have to speak loud. And so it was the changeover kept happening, and
switching before.
I appreciate it now. I definitely do.
I think so. I think it's put you in good stead, but I think it must have still been challenging at the time. At the time,
it was really challenging because you had to, for school, for instance, academically, etc. You had to prove that you can keep up. Number two, you also had to engage because you're children. And remember, children know race by, oh, that person is a different color to me, but let me play with them. And vice versa. The white child would be like, oh, there's a black child, let me play with them. But then both kids are now dealing with the influences they're getting from their parents.
From the outside. Correct.
The parents
Correct.
The parents from our end are saying, well, you better make sure you're as good as the white kids and you must be able to beat them and in school. And then the white kids are also maybe, skeptical. But at the end of the day, it did work out. Then there was now the introduction of sport, so that we first started as cricket, rugby,
right?
Athletics, etc. So now that's where the little journeys are started.
Okay.
I'm from a family that is very athletic, so to speak.
Okay. And what were the main sports? So you started, what were like how can I say, when you transitioned from Vinona to St. John's, what were the main sports that you were playing?
Well, already at Vinona, because from Vinona, the difference of Vinona and St. John's was pretty much Vinona was a government school and St. John's was private school, but the standards were pretty much the same. But obviously, as the years went by the time I went to St. John's, the standards in terms of exposure with school like St. John's were slightly different in that the more privileged kids were there, and the ability to tour and see more, was different. So I did play rugby because and my story with sport is very weird. I did play rugby from primary school going on to high school, but I didn't like it.
Sure.
My brothers, who were both head boys at Venona High School,
right,
which was also a predominantly white school back then, my older brothers played rugby and so forth. And I would like to say that genetically, my family were gifted in sport.
Yes.
But I've always been very, when everyone is going right, I go left.
You go left, sure. You're contrarian. You're contrarian. You do the opposite.
I didn't like the idea of being glory boy at school, or I didn't like that attention. I didn't like the idea of being the typical sports guy who's in first team rugby and so forth. So I would almost say that I slowed myself down in that way. And
did you grow up with pressure?
There was a lot of, there was pressure because
you have two brothers above you. Oh, you're so-and-so's brother, right? Yes.
Exactly. So I went through the phases, but I quickly decided, no, I want to go in my own direction. I decided to be a bit more. So I played basketball, a bit of cricket. So I played a bit of everything. And I realized I didn't quite like it. So I started to delve more towards weight training, where I was kind of in charge of my pace, and I didn't have to be part of
these group dynamics, of sport dynamic. So at this particular time, this is interesting because at that particular time in history, I think at least bodybuilding now or weight training is a very mainstream sport, if I can call it that now. But at that particular time, there was
when I was at St. John's, that's where the weight club started. And I had a few teachers that were interested in weightlifting and bodybuilding. And I liked that because what got me into it is one of the games that I played, I actually had my leg broken because it was stepped on in a rugby mall.
Wow.
So for rehabilitation sakes, I started to do some weightlifting because I couldn't go back to school. So I couldn't go back to rugby. And then I got better and I went back into it. But this was when I was really maybe grade 7 or Form 1. Yes. And then as the years went later, I preferred and I looked up to, the Arnold Schwarzenegger magazines.
Yes.
And I started to look at, to be honest, some of the Zimbabwe bodybuilders and people like Arnold Schwarzenegger, who were the big names in our time. And and when I studied the life of Arnold Schwarzenegger, I liked that. But my personality, and this is from when I was a little boy, I've always been about a person who I was never in a group, even as friends. I've never been a person who, if there's more than 3-4 people, I kind of pull away.
A bit of a lone wolf.
Yes.
Sure.
But the thing is, I remember there was what was called Civis Day at school. And I'm just trying to go back to what I think my personality comes from. And when I'm going back to Venona Primary, where there was now the integration of rather the less privileged kids mixed with very privileged kids. And I remember the one day, and I think I might have been grade 4 or 5 when that other integration had started of the less privileged kids being allowed to come to these, for lack of a better word, affluent schools.
Yes.
We had a civis day where you wear
Civis day, your casual clothes,
your casual clothes for a day in the name of charity. So I remember specifically one day, one of the kids that came from, they were obviously be coming from the high density areas into school, with uniform, everybody looks the same. And they came with clothes that were, a little bit torn, etc.
Yes.
And one of my friends, and I remember I was a little kid, one of my friends actually laughed at this kid. And this is very embarrassing. I was very upset, and I expressed myself to my friend physically, like, why are you laughing? Like why are you laughing at him?
Because you empathized. He empathized, right?
And from there, when I look back, that's when I think my nature of having that empathy for people started. And that same boy ended up a very good friend of mine. And I went out of my way to become his friend. So obviously it must come from
somewhere.
Something innate. Also, I have to give thanks to my parents, who always told me that there is nobody you are better than, there is nobody who's better than you. So as a young child, that is, I think that's where it all stemmed from.
Yes.
Going forward into, becoming a fitness coach.
A fitness coach.
A fitness coach, which was almost by default, because later on in high school, just as I finished high school, I had an unfortunate car accident. I'm sure you know about that.
Before you get to the car accident, so firstly on that story, I kind of talked about, what high school was, what junior school was like, being the first generation of, people starting school at these multiracial schools, right? Or more affluent schools. And I think there's so many different stories, I think, that come from that particular generation of people, and that is a specific example of you guys. I know what it's like to grow up in high fields. It's tough for all of us trying to code switch, and the uniform helps make us feel, at least for a day, blend in and try to blend in. And then of course you have just child wearing civis and then being laughed at. And I've heard that story in different iterations many times, and it's tough, it's tough. But I think
I always say to my dad, you guys had it easy, because if I can speak about segregation, is that okay?
Yeah. Listen, yes, you may.
Yes, that when they were in the rural areas and in the ghettos, and there was no mixture.
Yes.
So I said to them, in terms of feeling the segregation and bigotry, we felt it more, because remember, they went to work and they threw us in to the deep end, where as a child, remember, you now have names, you're being called names, and you're confused that what is going on.
What does this mean? Yes.
Your parents are basically saying, listen, we've moved to the northern suburbs, toughen up and prove yourself. So as much as the older generation sometimes might believe that, we had it worse because, we had curfews, we had, but I said, but you guys were totally separated in that your community, you didn't have to go to school with people that could have been judging or disrespecting you. But us, as that first generation after 1980, we were thrown into that, where we had to adjust. And the same thing for the white kids. They also had to adjust. But remember, we are all children, and they're trying to form the mentality that, oh, actually, I have never been around a black person, but they're actually human and they're nice people. And then the black person is saying, well, the white person is actually not an animal, because you know how children are innocent.
Yeah, because you've been influenced by your surroundings to believe certain things.
Exactly. So the influence of the bitter parents is now washed away with the interaction at school. Although in the back of your mind, there is the idea that, you know what, we are different, but we got to make this happen. So for our generation, I can almost say it was very tricky, to have 2 or 3 families in a school of 600 kids, and there's 2, 3, 4 black families. It's
tricky. It's a movie. I think as you mentioned, I think every generation has its own struggle or its own mantle that it has to kind of take on to bear. What I find interesting about the struggle of your guys' generation is from a scope of possibilities perspective, in terms of building a life, it's very interesting. I think if you talk about how you were the first, you guys, if we could be honest, you're the first guys to play sports like rugby. I mean, Zimbabweans of color to play rugby, cricket, all of these things, and really try and discover what being black in this new world, what the pathway forward looks like, And I think for you, what's interesting is you then say, I don't know what was the moment. Did you pick up a magazine and then say, oh, I think bodybuilding, you mentioned Arnold Schwarzenegger earlier. What was the moment where you said, maybe as a young black Zimbabwean, I can,
What happened is, as a kid, you've got, your physical being, and through playing sport, you can see that, oh, okay. Highfields, a game known as Chisheru. Chisheru is basically, basically like a catch me if you can type of game, where you run, and then if you are touched by the person,
you run away.
Yes. So now you go, to this school where they give you a rugby ball, and then you just have to cross the line. And the idea is that you cross the line, and this person, they just mustn't touch you, let alone tackle you. So obviously,
it's a different translation of this.
Yes. So all the games that are played in the ghettos, where now you see, oh, it's actually a formal game, and there's going to be spectators. So there we go. And then obviously at school, the teachers who are coaches are like, you're talented. You should play this sport, etc. So in terms of bodybuilding and weightlifting, our fathers, even when they were, in the ghettos, they lived, there were gyms there. Remember, even in the ghettos, they were very well organized. There were communal pools, communal gyms, etc. So my dad was also big into weightlifting, etc. And I would obviously see that as a child. So when, and when now you go to a situation where you now read the magazines and you see, oh, there's these people who look like this, and then there is our own talented local bodybuilders who were there. So, the dream of a child is to have muscles and look like, back then the saying was Mr. Powerman. There was no diet involved. Actually, to have big muscles, you were supposed to just have spinach and sugar.
like Popeye.
Sugar for energy and power. Obviously, as you learn more, you know that, maybe sugar might not be a good idea.
Exactly.
So, when I saw the stories of even the guys like Innocent Chogai here, Bible Misha, the bodybuilders that were here, that were of color, and were doing well and winning this contest, I was like, whoa, that I like that. And I can do something without having any kind of prejudice or whatever to be in a team. But this, I can control how I advance. So before I even went into bodybuilding myself, I used to watch a lot of bodybuilding shows. I used to read a lot about it. And so as a young school child, you don't have weights, so you use tires and concrete blocks
and
all
cement
sorts
bricks.
of
And
things,
yes,
you know, because your dad is telling you, what are you doing lifting all those things? You know, you should become a doctor. You should become
right.
You need to be. My dad wanted me to be a pilot. You should be a pilot, and I'm like, no, actually, I don't really want to be a pilot. But,
I want to lift weights, but they're like, what, to lift weights?
Yeah. I like the idea. So my dad over time ended up, you know, like buying some weights and obviously going to a school like, you know, schools like St. John's, there's a gym that is put up there. So I spent, you know, number of hours after school doing weights and a bit of homework in between.
Where you could squeeze it.
Yeah, my weight program was interrupted by school quite a bit.
By schoolwork, though, affecting your regiment.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
You know.
So after.
So I complemented my sports, my rugby or cricket or whatever I did with, you know, weights is always something that you do as a side. So
correct.
If this is going to sound really awful, but you know, people encourage school reunions. How can I put it? School reunions, WhatsApp groups. Which, to me, I'm going to be very honest with you, Dumi, because we're very carte blanche in this conversation. School days were not my best years in life. My best years in life have been after school, because purely in school, as I said, I'm not a person who conforms a lot. In school, I felt like there was so much limitation. This is just me as an individual, and of course, I am not encouraging. I'm just saying, I feel in school, it's one thing being a star athlete or a star student amongst 600 people. My aim was, I would like to make a difference amongst 7 billion people in the world. And in school, sometimes I felt that you have a false sense of achievement. So that was my mindset, but I couldn't quite express it. So when a lot of people ask me, you know, school is something that I like to whiff through, but I became my own after school, because I now, you know, it was now outside of those parameters
of control, or I guess you're saying it was just an environment that wasn't at least discovery, but not optimal, I guess, for where you were.
I believe school is obviously incredible. But for me, sometimes the Dumi that was at school and the Dumi that is now, we are still forming our characters. And while your characters are forming, you are being told that you are the fastest runner, you are the most intelligent in maths, you are the most this, but you are that amongst 600 adolescent little kids. But sometimes in school, we carry that character. To carry that character after school is a problem.
It's very dangerous.
I don't know if you get what I'm saying. That's why
fully, I
think.
Remained, I was saying to like
positive.
Go on. Yes, go on.
Positive in Zimbabwe, where a lot of the people want to be negative. I'm like, no, let's look at the positive side and not go with a trend. Does it make sense?
For sure. I was spot on. I was speaking to someone the other day around I look at the idea of marathon running, comrades, to ocean, or any marathon for that matter. The people that I know that I went to high school with, that are the strongest marathon runners, long distance runners, when I was at high school, couldn't even do a 5K, quite frankly. They couldn't do a 5K. And I look back, I was like, goodness me, how is that person doing a comrades? I was like, well, high school, you can't reduce one person's scope of possibilities to what they were at high school, but it can be very dangerous because a lot of people and I've seen this, hold on to that identity from high school and carry it into
Exactly.
adulthood.
So in high school, you won't see me in many pictures of me being in first team rugby or first team basketball, because I would only hold that for as long as a term, and then I'm bored and I don't want to do it because of if you get what I'm saying. I wouldn't be what you call the classic sportsman at school.
Yes.
But now this year is 26 years. After school, I've been 26 years in fitness and involved in helping people in different sports disciplines. And I would, if you were to go back to school, no one would have
be the
thought
person. Exactly.
Otis would be the one that would have lasted the longest. It's really, you can see there's a bit of gray here. I've gone gray being in this fitness industry.
Yes,
but in school, I was almost what you would call the lazy rugby player, the lazy basketball player with talent, the lazy sprinter, because the competitive edge, number one, hadn't really come out. Number two, I didn't really, my character was not comfortable with team sport because of the various influences that I didn't have a bit of control over.
I make sense.
Maybe I sound like a control freak.
Not at all. I think not at all. I think it's good that how can we say? There are always two types of students, right? Sometimes for people, high school is like the pinnacle of. I mean, I've heard someone say high school was the best days of life. I said high school was fun, but please, God forbid, there's so much more beyond high school that we can live, right? But I think in your particular case, I think there's who you were in high school and kind of the discovery that you had there, and then of course there's
absolutely. I mean, I'm in a St. John's group. I'm in a St. John's group, and I don't have much to say because some of the people are talking about, oh, this is us at school, and remember this, and remember this, and remember this. I just wanted school to be over because my heart wanted to be, I wanted to go out there in the world and make a difference out there in the world more than at the school, because what I was interested in was not, you must forgive me in this interview, English is my second language.
We're with you.
So when I'm thinking, it
wasn't as valued. So how did you transition? How did you transition into, of course, you had to, of course, then say, okay, I've left high school now. What's now? Because we have to almost.
The moment I left high school, I transitioned and made sure, you know what, I'm not going to join any rugby
clubs or whatever.
After school, whatever rugby club, I'm not going to join anything. I'm just going to go and do my bodybuilding. I'm going to train weights, and I'm going to look after my body, and I'm going to go watch bodybuilding shows and fitness shows and strength shows, and the opportunities in a very, almost through adversity is when the opportunities opened. Going soon after high school, I have a car accident.
And how did that? Whoa, hang on. Whoa. Yeah, the car accident. Okay, and what happened? How did that car accident even? Where were you in Were you in South Africa, Zimbabwe? Where?
It was in Zimbabwe. Well, basically, I had finished school, and basically I was dropping my sister my baby sister, now a grown woman. I was dropping my baby sister at Gateway. It's a little school in Gateway Primary School, and I was coming back fortunately, after having dropped her, and at an intersection where I was stationary, I got hit in the back literally by a bus. And that bus forced me onto oncoming traffic, and the oncoming traffic was a truck. Remember, I'm repeating what I was told. And if I remember correctly, I probably was in my pajama shorts with my driver's license left at home, just wanting to go drop my sister, come back and go to bed and feel and understand what it's like being a loafer after school, or you know, that break you have soon after school.
And you feel like, where's my life going? What? Yeah.
Short, miracle survival. I broke all my ribs. I broke my hands. I cracked one bone in my leg, and then of course I had lacerations from the windscreen of the car onto my.
Is that where they came from?
Face. And you know, I did spend some time in ICU and ventilator machines, etc. And this is coming from a guy who was physically, you know, strong. I must say, at that age, I had a bit of a nice body, and you know, bodybuilding, I looked good. And then suddenly I'm confined to bed where I can't even feed myself. So
you almost died. You almost died.
Yes, I actually managed to make the front page of what is called the Herald newspaper, because they took a picture of the accident, which I still have somewhere, and it was miracle survival of a person who was hit by a truck in the bus. You know, fast forward, I was discovered, ambulances, whatever came. I was cut out of the car, and eventually, I think maybe 3-4 hours later, my parents discovered I hadn't actually gone jolling for girls or anything. I didn't come home because I was in hospital. I went, you know, through rehabilitation. In my head, I think is the word, an epiphany came, and I was like, the day I get better, I'm going to make sure I have a strong body, and I'm going to make sure that I make other people physically stronger, because obviously for me to survive, it's all glory and thanks to God.
Yes.
Through me having a very strong body that I recovered, you know, going back to what you're talking about, COVID, that the stronger your body is, the better you recover. So I went through rehabilitation on, you know, walking, a bit of plastic surgery to remove the keloids and to allow what had happened to me. So I will tell you that I was, not only did I have a good body, I was extremely good looking. And then the accident spoiled all of this. I mean, come on.
It botched everything. It botched everything.
So they managed to fix something. So what I can tell you is that the appreciation now, and it's one of the best things that ever happened to me, the car accident, because I realized from then that if there's anything, for lack of a better term to use, that the devil can get you with, you can become a giver, you can become a generous person, but the devil always gets you with vanity. So now my body is gone, my face without spot or blemish is full of scars. So now you're in that hospital bed for weeks and weeks, and then you realize there's a lot more to life than being the physical. So by the time you met me, I was that person who believed it's not about what you become, it's about who you become. And that is, so personal training and training people is just me trying to express and change people into who they should become. Confident with themselves, appreciate movement, if it now moves on to you competing and have a good body, let's try and do that without the vanity. So to me, it's not really about the bodybuilding. It's about, I'm going to sound so goody two shoes, changing humans. So when a young Dumi comes from school and I see them and I'm like, well, why don't you start being an instructor and cleaning the toilets here and working at the gym? Because when you work with people, and like you said in the beginning, interact with people, like you did with your first job.
Yeah.
And what I did with you, I did with a number of people. Some that have become, that are rubbing shoulders with presidents now. I have a very good young man called Nish, who now works for the EU, and I gave him his first job, and up to this day, he rubs shoulders with presidents, etc. We're still in touch, but as much as he has a high salary, nobody has beaten the 1.5 billion salary I gave him the one year. It was a bond note. I said, you've been employed. Has anybody paid you $1 billion?
Paid you as much as I have.
No, Otis, no one has given me $1 billion. I said, yeah. In 2008, you got $1 billion salary from me.
Oh, that's hilarious.
So I'm just saying,
yes.
that is part of, I'm cutting you, but that is part of the journey where I believed in, everything is kind of dovetailing. Remember the grade 3-4 story I told you when I was upset when someone was being laughed at? It goes together with the idea of where I am now, where I believe you can be so much more than your academic qualifications. It's really all about who you become and being positive in an environment that is sometimes with the news, social media, there's so much negativity. But when you are in the gym, there is no suit, there is no I am this, there is no I am that. You're just a human who wants to interact, sweat, and enjoy yourself. And when Dumi comes in to the gym, and now you're a successful man yourself, and he's just left Michael house and he's like, what do I do with life? I'm like, let me let him, throw him into the deep end and let him interact with grown-up humans. And from there, like you said, and I'm very grateful, it set a mark for you on interaction with people. I'm sure you remember we used to take, I think I took you on a drive in a yellow, do you remember
Land Rover? Yeah, of course, with me, you and Alex, Land Rover.
Downtown.
just kicking it for a day. I do. I think that's, congratulations for, of course, I won't even say congratulations to you. I think you're for recovering from that particular event. It must have been just a grueling experience. And there's this one speech, I think, there's a Steve Jobs speech when he talks about in the face of death, well, not intellectually as an idea, but when you're within an inch of your life, everything else it erases all pretense, or these ideas that, vanity, everything else gets removed and brought down to ground zero. So just to recap, you're saying in that moment you said, you know what, I'm now at ground zero. I can really rewrite this thing from scratch. And your idea was fitness and rebuilding myself.
And I did. And I'm at my house in the background. You'll see there's a little trophy there. There's some trophies behind it. Those are trophies I won in various bodybuilding competitions. But for me to end up now, when I decided, look, I rebuilt myself into being able-bodied from, you know, the car accident, then I was like, actually, I can take this a step further. I'm going to actually be a bodybuilder and stand on stage and be judged on aesthetics and strength, which means I'm going to surpass just being able-bodied and walking and go to the next stage. So that is the reason I ended up going into bodybuilding, and the coaching. So I was bodybuilding and coaching at the same time. By then, I'd gone to South Africa.
This is after the accident. You've recovered.
For a different job, which was, there's a different job that I'd gotten there, but I was still rehabilitating myself when I was in South Africa. So I went to this club called Health and Racket. Now it's known as Virgin Active.
Yes.
So I was once again, and this is just before the independence of South Africa. So once again, what happened back then in Venona Primary, I was now thrown into predominantly white South Africa on where in the area I was working in.
Yes, yes.
So I was now working. So as I was going to the gym, because I had already had the experience of a country changing from an apartheid regime to what we can all call an
integrated country or rainbow nation, if I can call it that.
Integrated country. So the South Africans, I came in with a confidence back in '94 that the South Africans were like, oh, this black guy is quite comfortable, you know, just walking around and saying, you know, and so I became popular as I was going to the gym. I wasn't that barrier of the segregation. I had gone years, over 10 years without it. So I became, how can I put it, a popular black sheep amongst the family, because when I went to the gym, it was now like, oh, where do you work? And I was working for a certain security company, and I was where I was supposed to go up the grades till management. But once again, you know, that had been arranged by my dad, but I was still enjoying the gym. Then I quit the job without my dad knowing, because I had been offered a position at Health and Racket. To let you know, Health and Racket is now what is called Virgin Active.
Yes.
But it started off as Health and Racket.
Health and Racket.
I remember there was just a few Zimbabweans that were working there, because the majority of the people of color were in, back then, the more menial jobs like the cleaning, etc. in the gym. So now I was as an instructor. Then now this big Afrikaans guy who happened to be a celebrity in South Africa. He was a Springbok weightlifter and a Springbok Greco-Roman wrestler. He was a manager at this Health and Racket in a place called Rudeport. And he said, I want to train with you. I like the way you talk. Can we put you to have, you know, to do a course in personal training, but you must work on the job. I didn't tell my dad, and so my dad would phone me, how's work? I'd be like, oh, work is fine. So there I am, once again, the pigeon amongst the crows, so to speak, working in this environment. And for the first time, I was like a kid in a candy store.
Do you think, yes, this is it?
Then I was like,
this is it.
This is what I want to do. So from 1994 to this day, I've never left. And I've never left the fitness, coaching, personal training industry. And so now I'm in South Africa and I'm involved in this. And I moved from one gym to the other, etc., because they're enjoying this different guy who knows how to relate. And, and from there, I moved from instructor to personal trainer to ending up being, an MOD manager, a manager of a whole Virgin Active gym. And I'm enjoying this. And from there, I knew this is what I wanted to do. I've left Zimbabwe. I've come here, and the Otis that was at a school of 600 kids is now in this environment as a more confident human being with an advantage in that what South Africa was about to go through, I had already gone through.
I've been through this. I've been through it. I
was like, been there. So I was now being coached by very advanced and very good personal trainers. One of them being a guy called Reg Park, who was Arnold Schwarzenegger's coach and mentor, and another lady called Eula Stridham. So all what I know came from these guys. So by the time I came back to Zimbabwe, my coaching skills and what I knew and whose orbit I had been in was pretty much quite advanced. But being a foreigner, and I don't know quite how the saying is, because you want to know why I came back, because I wasn't illegal there and everything, but the problem of being a foreigner is you feel like a foreigner. You always, east, west, home is best. You always want to say, what I'm doing here, why can't I go and do it back home? And I had this beautiful girlfriend who was back home here, who's now my wife. That was another part. But she was on her own journey, but we had decided, look, so I was like, I've gotten enough from this country. I had seen the South African independence. I was there when South Africa won its World Cup rugby. I actually interacted with all those rugby players because they would come to the gym and train. I didn't know I was part of history. The woman that ended up winning the Miss World, there was a Miss World then. I got to be in her orbit and help her out. I think her name was Jack Mofokeng, help her out in in some of the workouts. So I was just this kid. And I really, when I look back, I was living in history in South Africa.
Literally.
But it was like a normal thing. Oh, South Africa is independent. Then it transitioned from health and racket. I think there was a business issue that happened, or an expansion issue. And I think Sir Richard Branson ended up rescuing the business, and it ended up being called Virgin Active. So I was there before it was even in history.
Active. Tell me something. Oh, what a whirlwind! You're living in a dream, if you almost, just like all of these various things happening. You're in South Africa. You're being discovered. I think earlier this year I read a book called Total Recall by Arnold Schwarzenegger, and 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 of course we all know Arnold Schwarzenegger's story and how he literally, it's unbelievable what he did. It's unbelievable.
Acting, politics.
It's crazy. It's marrying a Kennedy. Like,
the part was there. So a lot of people, and now I think the world is appreciating it, because now even in school you've got subjects to do with fitness and sports, etc. So I can almost say, without probably sounding vain, that I was a little bit ahead of my time, because that is what I wanted to do then. Because not everybody has is a genius the same way, and that's how I've brought my kids up, because my kids, they always think, Dad, how come you never look at our marks? You always look at how we behave. And it goes back to It's about who you become and not what you become. So when you talk about that book, Total Recall, as much as people will laugh at Arnold Schwarzenegger's accent, it's now become an accent that's worldwide known.
Right.
As much
Everyone
as people, when he went to the United States, people at the age of 25 said, oh, you need to change your name if you want to go into acting, and let's make it a smaller name. And he said, no, people shall know my name and pronounce it. And when he said, I'm going to get into politics, and people laughed at him. So if you look at his journey, the reason why I kind of look up to him, besides the fact that our link was Reg Park, who was a link between the two of us, was that he has shown that the conventional and the negativity that the world will throw at you, you can supersede it. And even in this world, you can wine and dine with very powerful people. He ended up in the White House meeting presidents, etc. And in my own small way, I have had the opportunity to meet many people in high offices and many people advanced in business, etc., through this, what is called personal training. So and that is my journey. And that is why I'm always positive that in a narrative where people are going, oh, what's going on with Zimbabwe? No, you in adversity and in negativity, if people can be positive and kind of, for lack, I think there's a word called lambano, where you think positive and then the body follows. It will always work. That's why with all the opportunity that I had to go to another country, I am not materially what the world would say, oh, is successful. But I believe I am very successful and content and very happy in Zimbabwe. And I believe we are on a good trajectory if more of us have this conversation. That you can be broken, but when a bone is mended, it can actually.
Absolutely. And you're so right. And I think you mentioned the idea, of course, being outside of the country, but also being exposed to, a lot of people who are able to be mentors to you. You mentioned Reg Park. Reg Park is a gentleman, after reading, Arnold Schwarzenegger idolized him. He literally, in fact, built his life just by watching Reg Park. He says, I want to be like Reg Park. I want to be in the movies like Reg Park. I want to be in printing.
He was the first Hercules.
Yeah, exactly.
So he lived in South Africa. So he was a British guy who ended up living in South Africa. And obviously when I went to South Africa, I had the opportunity to meet him and I wasn't scared. Remember, I had come from Zimbabwe. I'd been taught. So I said, I want you to be my mentor. And till the time he died some years ago, almost 10 years ago, we emailed each other. We spoke. I've still kept the emails. I've still got, we even went to Cape Town together and judged a bodybuilding show together. He was probably in his late 70s, 80s. And when I opened my gym at the Brook, I consulted with him and he was showing me the ways. And it was so fascinating to hear him say, oh, I've just spoken to Arnold Schwarzenegger. I told him about you because he was married to a lady called his wife. She's also late, I think Marion. And Reg Park's wedding anniversary ties in with Arnold Schwarzenegger's birthday. I think it must be July, coming up July or June or something. And I used to be like, and you're talking back then, I'll be like, I'm speaking to the man who speaks to Arnold. When Arnold comes to South Africa, he
that's my guy. He stays with Reg Park. He
stays with Reg Park, and this guy is telling me how to be a coach. He's coaching me on how to lift weights. So God put me right at the front to have the best coach. You know, I haven't quite become Arnold's success, but to me, hey, who would have thought?
Who would have thought? But I think here's what's powerful about it, right? We also, of course, what Reg Park became who he is, and by him being who he is, he shined a light. He was able to inspire Arnold, right? Those same people, of course, have been able to. Arnold was the inspiration to yourself. Reg Park, you have a direct. I mean, at the time, of course, you had direct email and phone too, right? What you, of course, have been able to do in your own very powerful way, I think, is then like translate that into the people that you train on a daily basis, right? So the circle has it's flowing. You might not say, "Oh, I'm not Arnold Schwarzenegger," but I think what's really, in fact, what I think is more important to you is being able to like learn, but then pass on to other Zimbabweans.
So, as with Arnold and as with Reg Park, I don't want to be known as a bodybuilder, but I want to be known, or even a personal trainer. One day, I want to be known as someone who motivated, because I did bodybuilding to be able to feel what a bodybuilder feels. So when I start coaching them, I have a direct experience of knowing exactly what to do. And that is why when I go back, let's go back to the grade 3 story where I expressed myself on someone who laughed at that boy. When I came back to Zimbabwe, I realized ladies were going to the gym, but were very, when, without saying much, we're almost marginalized, but the gym is for men, but women are invited. I needed to remove that. I don't believe in people being marginalized. Is that the term?
Yes.
And sometimes it happens without it being official. Like ladies should just go to the aerobics section and do aerobics. So I decided, well, there was maybe a few women who were doing bodybuilding and it wasn't a big thing. And I decided, you know what, if you are a spectator and watch something and you don't participate to make the change, then what's the point? Everybody was visualizing bodybuilding and fitness as a male thing. So I decided to promote ladies bodybuilding. And to this day, it has more popularity and draws a bigger crowd on stage in Zimbabwe because of the ladies, not for any other reason, but because they draw a bigger crowd, and it is incredible to see a woman, because why women in particular? Their bodies go through a lot more than men, but to transform a lady who's had children into standing on stage with a 4-pack is more amazing than looking at Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Whoever.
Because they are overcoming so many things, and also the stereotype of being judged for lifting those weights. If she's lifting the 20 kg weight and Mr. Zimbabwe is lifting his 100 kg weight, they're both lifting weights. They're both getting resistance. So that's why my emphasis became on first introducing ladies into bodybuilding and fitness on a larger scale. Number 2, it was predominantly a Black sport. So I, through my interactions, ended up promoting the mixture of bodybuilding, because I believe in fairness. Let's make the pool bigger for everyone.
Everyone, male, female, all races.
Even as the time went, I became president of the bodybuilding. I took advantage of being the boss, and I made sure I aligned competitions to focus on ladies and interracial, well, mix the sport. Does it make sense? Remember, this is my second.
Yes.
So from there, that momentum has built on. And if there is something that I am proudest of in my life, is having to have changed the landscape of bodybuilding in Zimbabwe. And through not only introducing women into bodybuilding, but having them get podiums, even internationally. So to me, that is something that I believe I'm proudest of, that I've made that difference. The momentum is still carrying on. I've ventured into the other sport where I promoted white collar boxing. I think you remember back at the Brook Gym.
Yes.
More than 10 years ago, I started promoting
boxing,
white collar boxing, which is now, you know, it was there, but I tried to also do the same thing I did with bodybuilding. And anyone who needed opportunity, I now pick at those things, because I wanted also not to be reduced to bodybuilding, but
be broader. Can be broader.
Ladies, and yes, broader. So I'm sure you remember Myrna Moore, the pilot. She did very well in Zim and, you know, Austria.
So she was a pilot. So she was a pilot?
She still is a pilot.
Yes. She is a pilot. Then what did you say to her? You said Myrna? Because I remember.
So I loved to pick ladies that had never been in the gym and without the influences. And I think throughout my career, I've taken a number of ladies to the podium, and now better trainers have now taken over. And
but you find you tell me. Tell me, so who are some of the people that you have? I'm going to shift to don't say trainer, but I would say motivated. Like, of course, motivated in the. Not maybe, because you can motivate many people. People who are listening can be motivated, but people who you've had a direct contact with, right?
I've had the advantage of being, you know, in the gym environment, both as an owner, as a partner. So if I can't coach you, I will make sure that you've got the opportunity to train for free in order to advance yourself, even if it's with another trainer. And just the other day, there's a very well-known trainer who's called Grant Mitchell, and he's training a guy called Scott Vincent, who is now qualified for the Olympics. And
huge.
Another lady, she is also qualified for rowing in the Olympics. And 2 years ago, Grant approached me and I said, they must train for free. We need to give them they shouldn't have to spend money if they are this good at this sport. So I think, and if you want to make a difference in life, you don't have to be the expert, but open the door. You know, I always look at life as in, there's an ocean. Let's all have the opportunity to go there, or there's a sea and fish, and everyone can. There's enough fish for everyone. So, Axel Jeffries, remember I used to train Axel Jeffries. Who ended up as a Formula 2 driver. I still interact with him. So I'm proud when I see him representing the country and the flag out there. And, you know, Tanya Muzinda, I sponsored her training at the gym.
Who's the motocross racer, right?
Girl.
Cross racer. There's so many. I think you wouldn't even be able to go to this. There's so many. And it is me who's more honored to have, you know, to have had a part in their lives. Then there's Dumi Mabena, who has become this great human. And it's so amazing when you see people who are now touching the sky, and you've had some part to do with it. You know? Yes, you're very kind. You're very kind. But here's the thing. So it's one thing to, of course, to motivate others. Who are some of the people that have motivated you? You know, you talked about people like Reg Park. Is there anyone else that has been
Reg Park,
that you draw strength from?
My dad and my mom gave me that that grounding. And hard work that my dad did in molding me to be this character. I certainly, and my mother, I certainly cannot take that for granted. And one of the people, because what I've learned, I saw my dad do it. My dad worked with a guy called, he's quite well known now, Strive Masiwa. He was basically part of my family. And he worked with my dad. He worked with my dad, and he is one of my mentors too, and still involved a little bit with my family because he used to work with my dad. And I saw how he mushroomed as a young man working with my dad. And now he has changed people's lives. He has changed a lot. You know, I will always like to look at the positive things that people have done, whether be it in business or in politics. Always nice to focus on the positive things. And so that's one of my mentors, because I like the fact that he, with his Higher Life Foundation, has managed to do so much. So on his page, I constantly banter with him.
You chime in with his stories.
I'm quite honored that he recognizes and he remembers me, and you know, he always talks about. So, you know, there's a saying that when I was young, I admired wealth and money. As I grew older, I started to admire kindness, because out of kindness, everything starts to flow, and just not being judgmental. So if our generation, and I'm in my 40s, going down, we would just try and look at the positive things about Zimbabwe. Just each person a bit at a time. It will always work out. And there's so many positive things that have come out of Zimbabwe. And like you've said, we don't like to sometimes, as generality, as a world, we don't like to look at the positive things. Positive, because bad and ugly news always make
headlines,
bigger news. But the headlines. And like, I'm very happy with what you've done, where you're just looking at the positive things and starting off with the people that have done well. To be positive and in encouraging people.
Yeah, because I think absolutely, and I think you're so right. And what happens is that a lot of people are doing a lot of great work, but what happens is that we end up doing great work in a vacuum. Of course, we do great work and we touch certain people, but if we aren't in the African culture, we have a culture of telling stories. That's how we pass on our history, our story, you know, and preserve our identity, and we pass those on. But right now, I think there's not a lot of those things being captured. So then how can we learn from Otis? It's important to tell the positive story, not for the sake of being patronizing, but because it's as important and it can inspire someone else. I guess for me, to wrap up is like, firstly, to say thank you so much, you know, for taking the time to discuss and walk through your journey, and hopefully someone can draw inspiration from this.
Thank you.
What parting words of motivation could you have, whether it's for a young person in grade 3 or a person in high school, or whether even a person who wants to maybe train and get their body, you know, strong? What parting words of wisdom from your journey could you share?
From my journey, thank you. Thank you very much, Dumi. All I can say, I don't know if I've even inspired anybody with this story that I've said, but I can truly say to any young person is that try and be yourself, discover who you are. And there's a lot that is being thrown on social media and people who you can drawn to mentor. But look at your story, look at your journey, and be positive, and tell yourself whatever you want to get into. If you want to get into bodybuilding and fitness, and you feel that is it that you want to do, go towards it. Find people that will motivate you towards that. It's also easier in this world now that you've got access also to the internet and social media, but don't limit yourself. And I had to go through my own direction of finding out. Some of it was through some adversity, but it ended up there because a lot of people end up doing majors and degrees that they don't want to do, etc. But I can confidently say to you, I am exactly where I wanted to be. So don't look back, just believe in yourself and don't become someone else and lose yourself and lose who you are in that journey. If you look at, because you like something doesn't mean it is something that is destined for you. A lot of people like soccer, but it doesn't mean you become a soccer player. So you can like something, but your heart will tell you what you want to get into. Like when I went into South Africa and I was this kid in a toy shop, when I went into the Virgin Active, I found it. And every single person has that.
And everyone, and those are, so the key thing becomes just be honest with yourself and look within and say, is this it? And if you feel that it's not it, be honest with yourself and say, this is not it.
Be honest with yourself, and everything will align. Everything will align to make you successful in that. It doesn't matter. You want to do it, the earlier, the better. But at any stage in your life, be you grade 3 or be you 50 years old or 60 years old, once you realize what you want to do, everything aligns to make sure that you become successful in what you're doing. And without fail, you will motivate. Your story will motivate the next person. It doesn't matter what you're going. It doesn't matter what you're going into.
Otis, thank you so much for the wisdom. And this has been certainly illuminating for me. And I think as you've been speaking, you've just been speaking a whole lot of truth, and I've had a lot of aha moments. So thank you so much for bearing yourself.
I'm truly honored that you even gave me, this chance. I'm very honored, and thank you for thinking about me and even acknowledging that my story is of any relevance.
It is. Cool. Thank you, sir.
Thank you too, sir.
Nobuchaga uripiko